The first story is called, I Was Working as a Forest Ranger. Something is following me now, by this user. I always liked the quietness of nature, the peace that comes with walking through the trees and into the woods. Also, watching the clear night sky is a very nice thing to do when out in the forest. Seeing so many stars just remind me of how small we really are. How insignificant is our existence? We could disappear in an instant, and the universe wouldn't even notice. My brother always brought me with him when he went camping, and that's when I discovered my passion for nature. Now, I just like to go hiking or camping with my friends, as my brother has moved out of the country. I hope I will see him soon. I really miss spending time with him. I'm worried I won't have the privilege of doing that, given the situation I find myself in now, but hope is all I've got. If you read this, please pray for me. I need that. I won't give specific details about me, as I don't consider them important. I'm a 26-year-old man. That's the most I'm saying. I will tell you how I got in this situation. I recently started to work as a forest ranger. Everything seemed okay at first, but the fact that they just took me without any interview should have rang some alarm bells. I was desperate for a job, as I have very little money, so I never thought about it. The day I arrived at the cabin was beautiful. The sun was setting, leaving off a dim orange light going through the trees. The weather was nice, your typical clear summer weather. Everything was perfect. The cabin is almost entirely made out of wood. Classic, I thought. It's big enough for 1 or 2 persons, and it looks very cozy inside. I stepped through the door and put my backpack underneath the bed. I opened the wardrobe and put on my sleeping clothes. As I got comfortable, I noticed there was a piece of paper on the table, along with a survival guide and a metal crucifix. Something was wrong. I picked up the note, and something felt very off about it. I could feel the blood running cold in my veins as I started to read it. Hello, my name is Killian Sutter, and I am the former ranger who worked here. I don't want to scare you, but this job is not as you would expect. You see, weird things happen here, and they can prove to be deadly if you don't follow carefully when I tell you. In order to be able to survive, this note will be your Bible. The rules I have written for you are things I discovered on my own while working here. I don't know if this is everything, but it's mostly what usually happens here. 1. If the light bulb in your cabin suddenly starts to flicker, lock the door immediately, close the curtains, and turn off the lights. The thing will come close to your cabin and will try to enter. Do not panic, as it will leave if it doesn't find a way in. 2. Always lock the door behind you when you go outside. Failing to do this will result in the thing waiting for you in the cabin, hidden somewhere. 3. If you hear scratching coming from outside the cabin, do not be tricked by your ears. It's not coming from outside, but from inside. Stay still and hold your breath. The thing is blind, and it won't know you are there if you do that. It should leave by the time you can count to 10, rushing through the door. 4. While outside, be as quiet as you can, or it will hear you. If it does, rush back to the cabin and barricade yourself in there. 5. If at any point you get injured, clean the wound fast and bandage it so that you can't see any blood. The thing can smell blood from far away, and it makes it go into a feral frenzy. Also, change the bandage often. When you do that, throw the old bandage in the fire. 6. Never leave your cabin after the sunset and before the sunrise, no matter what. The thing is much more aggressive when it's dark outside. 7. Before you go to sleep, put the metal crucifix I left you in a direction facing the entrance to the cabin. 8. Set your alarm at 3 a.m. and wake up to check on the crucifix. If it has blood on it, ignore rule number 6 and get out of the cabin as fast as you can and run to the storm shelter. I have marked it for you on the map in the survival guide. 9. Don't try to escape the woods until your contract expires, or the thing will follow you wherever you go. You have been warned. Some situations will require you to combine the rules, so be sure to remember them all. Good luck, and keep yourself safe. Heck no. What did I get into? Thoughts rushed aggressively through my mind. I was both angry and confused at the same time. I didn't know if the note was a prank, or if it was real. Maybe this guy Killian just wanted to scare me. But I'd rather not take any chances, and follow what is written on that piece of paper. At least until I realize if it's fake or not. When I got hired, nobody told me that somebody left before I was about to get into this. Maybe they knew I wouldn't accept if they told me this. Soon after, it was dark outside. I was sleepy, and I almost forgot to put the crucifix to face the door. Then I went to sleep. The next day, I woke up and noticed a big scratch on my right arm. I was bleeding. I quickly cleaned the wound and applied a bandage to it. I also threw my shirt and the stained bed sheets in the fire because they had my blood on them. I froze then. How did this happen? Then I remembered the rule. Set your alarm at 3 a.m. and wake up to check on the crucifix. If it has blood on it, ignore rule number 6 and get out of the cabin as fast as you can and run to the storm shelter. I didn't check the crucifix. I have to admit, I was scared. The list of rules was not a prank. Killian knew something I didn't, and he wanted to warn me about it. I haven't seen this thing he was talking about in the note until now, but I'm sure I don't want to see it. Not after what happened today. I checked to see if the crucifix had blood on it. Yeah, I know. I should have done that hours earlier. It seemed to be fine. Why did I wake up with a big scratch on the arm then? What the hell is going on? I spent the rest of the day in my bed, afraid to get outside the cabin to check the woods. This night, I followed the rules exactly as I should have the night before. I put the crucifix to face the door and woke up at 3 in the morning to check on it. It was fine. The next 5 days were peaceful, and I finally summoned the courage to do my actual job and go check the woods. I was quiet, and I didn't attract any unwanted attention. Those were the best days. I could actually enjoy being out in the nature and relax for a while. I felt so disconnected from the troubles of my life. I felt a sensation of peace. It was almost like the rules never existed, apart from the night ones and the door locking one. I was out there enjoying myself. I didn't miss my normal days before I got the job. I enjoyed every last moment of those quiet days, and I'm glad I did because things started to get bad. On the 8th day, I was inside the cabin, reading a book while I was in bed. And then, I've heard it. Scratching sounds were seemingly coming from outside. I remembered the rule. If you hear scratching coming from outside the cabin, do not be tricked by your ears. It's not coming from outside, but from inside. Stay still and hold your breath. It should leave by the time you count to 10. I quickly closed my eyes and stood frozen in the bed, holding my breath. I could feel the breath of the thing as it was sniffing me. I think it sensed the smell of fresh meat. A quick meal. I started to count. I was about to reach 10 when I heard a loud noise. The thing rushed out of the cabin through the door. I ran and closed it, locking it in the process. Then I passed out on the floor. When I woke up, it was almost midnight. Oh, my God, the crucifix. I quickly rushed to put it in a position to face the door. Did I fail this rule? Am I going to die? These thoughts tormented me until 3 a.m. when I checked it. My heart started to beat fast, so fast that it could tear my chest apart. The crucifix had blood on it. In a panic, I grabbed the survival guide and a flashlight, and I booked it to the storm shelter. I could feel the thing following me, getting closer each moment. After a 15-minute run, I arrived at the storm shelter. I rushed through the door and locked it behind me. Then, I fell down from the pain I could feel in my left leg. I think I snapped my ankle, trying to outrun the beast out there. I crawled in a corner and fell asleep, waking up before the sunrise from the aching pain in my left ankle. Then, I fell asleep again. As I woke up, I asked myself, how am I going to make it back to the cabin with a snapped ankle? I improvised a walking stick out of a wooden pole in the storm shelter, and I started to hike back to the cabin. I had to get help. There is no mobile service in the forest, and I don't have a landline in the cabin. Also, I'm not a doctor, and I can't do anything about my ankle. As I was walking around the forest, I could feel the thing from before was watching me, smiling at me. I was easy prey. I couldn't get away from it anymore. My heavy footsteps were leaving deep marks on the ground as I was getting more and more tired. Finally, I got back to the cabin. I ate something, then I thought of something risky. I planned to leave the woods tomorrow. I knew it was stupid, and I also knew what would happen if I do that. It's written in the rules. I lost the flow of time while contemplating on my decision, and soon it was dark outside again. I turned on the light, and soon it started to flicker. No, not now, I thought to myself. I checked to see if the door was locked, and sure enough, it was. I closed the curtains and turned off the light, as instructed. Shortly after, I could hear it. The thing was outside the cabin, trying to find a way in. It started to claw at the walls and smash its body on the door. I accidentally caught a glimpse of what the thing looked like through a small part of window. It was tall, and it had pale skin, like it was made out of snow. You could see the veins in its skin. That's how pale it was. It had long limbs and big, razor-sharp claws. But the most terrifying thing was its head. It was human, but it was missing its eyes. It had big, dark, and empty eye sockets. So dark, you could stare into them and feeling a sensation of plunging into the abyss. I could feel the terrible hunger for human meat this creature had, and I was scared. It wanted to tear at me, rip out my flesh, and feast on it. It would be just a matter of time until it gets me. After a while, it left, and I went to put the crucifix to face the door. I also woke up at 3 a.m. to check on it, and it was clean. My lucky night, I had to get some rest for tomorrow. I woke up the next day and geared up to leave the forest once and for all. I exited the cabin and started to hike towards the edge of the woods. I was slow as I had to use the improvised walking stick from earlier, as I hadn't eaten for a long while, and I was gripped by agonizing hunger. I tripped over and fell to the ground. The noise was loud enough to attract that thing to come to me. I saw it getting closer, grinning its teeth in anticipation. I was done for. Then, I heard something in the woods. A very loud growl was echoing through the trees, and it seemed to scare the thing from earlier. Then came a beast similar to this one, running on all fours, and the two clashed in a fight. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. The monster which came recently scared the other, which was running like a wounded animal back to the thick tree line. I could see the beast was wearing a torn ranger uniform, or the remains of it. On the badge, I could read the name of the wearer. It was written clear and big, Killian Sutter. The thing ran back into the woods, chasing the other beast. What did just happen? I was very confused, until I remembered that Killian Sutter was also the name of the last ranger who worked in this forest. Why was he a beast? And why did he attack the other one? I'm grateful that I'm alive. I picked myself up and continued to hike out of the forest. I arrived at the road and got into my car. I called 911 as I was injured, cold, and afraid. I passed out after. I woke up in the bed of a hospital. There's something clawing at the door, and I know what happened. I broke the last rule. Don't try to escape the woods until your contract expires, or the thing will follow you wherever you go. Now I'm just sitting in the hospital bed, afraid of whatever got out of that forest and is now following me. I can sense its hunger. It wants my flesh, and I know that a door is not enough to stop it. As the hinge got looser and looser, I was preparing for the impending doom ahead. I accepted the fact that I'm going to die, but I got lucky again, as if left before the door was broken. I feel like it's playing with me, preying on my fear, and it knows that I can't do much about it. As I'm writing this, I got discarded from the hospital, and I'm sitting in my bed at home. I know it's only a matter of time before I will see that creature, but this time, I won't run. I'm going to face whatever the heck that is. The next story is called, I Took Something from the Forest. Now it wants to take something from me, by this user. I thought it wasn't a big deal. My son is on a rock collecting kick. Well, collecting is being generous. He's just digging up the most random, boring, uninteresting rocks and putting them in a box. I've offered to buy him a collection of gemstones or whatever, but apparently the act of digging them up is the whole point. Our backyard looks worse than when our dog Sadie dug up everything that one summer. Holes everywhere. Well, today, Ben wanted to bring his shovel to the local state park and dig up some. I wasn't sure if it was legal to take rocks from a state park. It probably wasn't, but we weren't taking things of value, you know. It's not like we were panning for gold or digging up fossils. We were just stealing average, completely uninteresting rocks. We hiked out about half a mile on the main trail, then spent an hour filling up his backpack with rocks. It was good for us to get exercise, to be out in the fresh air. As we started for the parking lot, however, I had a weird feeling. Maybe it was just the heavy backpack digging its straps into my shoulder, but I felt a sort of weight pressing down on me. A random anxiety out of nowhere. It was difficult to describe. It didn't quite feel like a panic attack, or impending doom, or being watched. It felt sort of like a cross between the three. Like something was just wrong. Like the natural order of things was disturbed. A disturbance in the force, if you will. But that was ridiculous. It would be bad, ecologically, to take dumpster truckloads of soil from the forest to use in your garden, or cut down a whole bunch of trees. But to take a small backpack full of rocks from a 100-plus acre state park? How bad could that be, really? Depends on who you ask, I thought as we hiked uphill. To the grubs and the microbes who lived under that rock, very bad. To the rest of the forest, unnoticeable. I followed Ben's little form up the hill, panting now. The trees stretched up around me. I turned back to see the empty forest, the babbling brook, the trail winding behind a hill. It just felt wrong. Like I was bringing bad luck on us or something. I shook the thought out of my mind. We made it to the car, and I hauled the backpack inside. Then we drove out of the parking lot. In the middle of the road stood a deer. It stared at us with its dark eyes, unmoving. The road was narrow, so I couldn't go around it without risking hitting it. I pressed the horn for a second, letting out the tiniest beep to startle it. An ear twitched. I've never seen a deer this close before. Ben shouted from the back seat. Wow! It looked like it was silently judging me. I lay on the horn harder. The deer finally moved and slowly made its way across the road. We woke up sick the next day. Those f***ing Lowrys, I told my husband. They're always sick. The kids had a play date 2 days ago. No doubt that's where we picked it up. Ben stayed home from school. We set up cartoons in the family room. Lots of blankets. I brought my laptop over to try to get some work done, even though I was feeling pretty bad myself. My husband left for work. Colds for me always start with a sore throat, but this one felt different. I was getting chills. My eyes were watery. I was stuffed up, and every so often I'd get a sudden wave of nausea. "How are you feeling, buddy?" I asked. "Nauseous? Tired?" He nodded, looking pretty bad. A few minutes later, another one of the nausea waves hit. I started for the bathroom, then redirected as I realized I wasn't going to make it. I vomited in the sink, the awful projectile kind, where your entire body is convulsing, and you can't do anything to stop it. More and more vomit. Tears ran down my cheeks. And then, as I was coughing, I felt something strange coming up my throat. Something solid, like I'd swallowed a stone. Before I could fully process it, my body convulsed, and the thing shot out of my mouth. It looked like some sort of vegetative matter sitting in the bottom of the sink. The convulsions stopped. I grabbed a paper towel and wet it, wiping down my face. I reached out and poked the mass. It stuck together like it hadn't been digested at all. I flipped it over, and it was dark brown on the bottom. An earthy smell, like soil after a rain, mixed with the acrid smell of vomit. What the hell? Last night, I'd had a salad. I'd had half of a bagel today before the nausea started. Neither of those things could really describe what I saw in the sink, unless I somehow hadn't digested the salad well. But then it would have looked like lettuce. This looked almost like moss. I rinsed it down, drank some water, and went back out to Ben. He looked like he was about to fall asleep. Feeling a little better, I sat down at the laptop and tried to get some work done. In the hazy gray of pre-dawn, a deer stood in our backyard. It was a buck, stately antlers attached to its head, piercing the mist. Don't deer only have antlers in the fall? I thought vaguely, still half asleep. Ben had woken up, and I'd measured out some kid's Advil for him. Now he was settling back to sleep, and I had nothing to do but look out the window. I didn't want to use my phone and let the blue light wake me up. I watched as the deer stood there, motionless. We'd only had deer in our backyard a few times before. I knew they were crepuscular, active at dawn and dusk, so I guess this guy was looking for breakfast or something. But then he moved, and I realized just how wrong I was. He started walking towards the woods, but everything about his movements was wrong. It almost reminded me of a bipedal creature, forced to walk on all fours. His rump higher than his shoulders, his back legs too long, bent too much, awkwardly hobbling towards the woods. I ran over to the window, but it was still so dark out. The deer slowly ambled to the woods, spindly, two long legs bending weirdly. My stomach turned. Nothing about this looked right. Then he disappeared. It took me a long time to fall asleep after that. How are you feeling? Terrible, I told my husband, drinking some hot tea. The sore throat had now kicked in, and it felt like I could barely swallow. Ben actually seemed to be doing a bit better than me today. He was able to make it out of bed and was sitting on the rug, playing with his cars. Ben seems better. I know. Thank God for that. I guess it makes sense you feel worse, he said, gesturing to me. How's the nausea? A little better. Then I told him about the deer, but it was hard to describe how weird it looked with words. The dread I felt in my stomach while I watched it. It was probably injured and limping or something, he replied. Or maybe it had that. What is it? Chronic wasting disease? Where the deer look like zombies? I guess that made sense. By midday, I was vomiting again. This time, something slimy and long dribbled out of my mouth. I pulled at it to find a long yellowed fiber, like a strand of long grass. The seed head was broken open, and a black fungus bloomed over it. It was time to call a doctor. Do you have any history of pica? Pica? Eating non-food items. Like the grass you described in your vomit. I shook my head. Do you sleepwalk? Not that I know of. Normally, I wouldn't be that concerned. But given your condition, he trailed off with a half-smile. I'll get in touch with your doctor. He continued asking me questions, but nothing was really leading anywhere. I'd brought the piece of grass with me, in a baggie, and he looked at it. Food contamination, pica while sleepwalking, random things brought up that I knew weren't right. Something terrible was going on, and it had to do with those fucking rocks. The deer, the vomiting. We had taken something from the forest, and it was retaliating. I wasn't a superstitious person. Maybe it was my sleep deprivation and how awful I was feeling and my current brain fog. but I became obsessed with the thought that it was the rocks doing this. We'd upset the natural balance. We'd angered something. They were worthless to us, but valuable to the forest. After Ben fell asleep, I bagged up all the rocks and drove out to the edge of the woods. My husband offered to come with me, but I refused, saying I was just getting some milk at the Quick Mart. I didn't want him to think I was crazy. I hauled the rocks into the car and drove to the state park. The main entrance was closed for the night, of course, but the forest extended right to the edge of the road. I pulled over on the shoulder and hauled the bag out of the car, dropping it onto the curb. I zipped the bag open, and one by one began hurling the rocks into the woods. There were 7 in total. 1, I heard the rocks soaring through the air, breaking branches with it. Snap, snap, snap. Then a thwack as it landed on the ground. 2, this was a big one, but I was able to lift it a few feet off the ground and sort of toss it a few feet beyond the tree line. It made a heavy clunk sound as it, presumably, collided with another rock on the ground. 3, this one was small, and I gave it a wicked pitch, sailing through the air. Snap, snap, then nothing. I stood there, confused. It shouldn't have met the ground that soon. Unless it hit something zizzy, something sailed past my ear. Thwack! The rock I'd thrown in moments before whizzed past my ear, hit the side of my car, and dropped to the ground. I stared at it, my heart pounding. Someone's out there. Oh no, no, snapping branches, growing louder and louder. I dove back into the car and slammed the door shut. The engine revved and I pulled away from the curb, leaving the backpack full of rocks. Where it sat, I swerved onto the road. A deer came bounding out of the woods. Lit in harsh, white light from my headlights, it stumbled out awkwardly, like it was meant to stand on 2 legs, just like the one I'd seen in our backyard. The hind legs were too long, twisted and bent, and the steps it took were clumsy and uncoordinated. I hit the brakes. The deer stared back at me with unblinking, black eyes, but the more I looked at it, the less it looked like a deer. The proportions were all wrong. The eyes were too big. The snout was too long. The legs were bent weirdly to accommodate being on all 4s. Even the antlers split and then rejoined again, completely different from a normal deer's antlers. I should have just swerved around it, but I found myself staring, mesmerized, as it pulled itself onto 2 legs. At its full height, it stood around 8 feet tall, face outside the scope of my headlights, fur glinting in the moonlight. I gave them back, I screamed. I gave the rocks back. Not like I expected this thing to actually understand me. Unfortunately, I don't know what happened over the next 5 minutes. I was staring at it, and then I was speeding home through the darkness. I don't remember swerving around the deer. I don't remember if it tried to attack or stop me. I was staring at it, and then suddenly, I was speeding home. Horrible, sharp pain needled my abdomen. I let out a half scream as I stomped on the gas pedal harder, careening down the country road. The next day later, the bleeding started. I was having a miscarriage. And as I sobbed on the floor of my bathroom, I couldn't help but think the thing had made things even. I'd taken from the forest, so it took something from me. The next story is called, "There's a Reason the Forest Behind Our House is Fenced Off. I Wish I'd Listened," by this user. When my wife Sarah and I bought the house, it felt like a dream come true. Quiet neighborhood, plenty of trees, and a big backyard with a rusted, overgrown fence running along the far edge. The realtor said the forest behind it was undeveloped county land. No trails, no utilities, no trespassing. She mentioned the fence was probably an old property divider, but it wasn't just a fence. It was nearly 8 feet tall, made of rusted iron, with twisted, sharp points along the top. like it was built to keep something in, not out. Right in the center, hidden behind vines and moss, was a gate, welded shut with thick seams of metal and rust. On the inside of that gate, our side, someone had carved a single word into the metal: stay. At first, we thought it was some strange leftover from the previous owners. Maybe they were paranoid. Maybe they had kids and wanted to scare them from wandering into the woods. Now I think they were trying to warn us. The dog noticed it first. Bear is usually friendly, dumb as a rock but loyal. After we moved in, he refused to go near the fence. Wouldn't even step into the backyard. He'd stand at the sliding door, growling softly, tail low, ears pinned. Then the dream started. Sarah said she kept dreaming about the woods. Dense, black trees packed tighter than they should be. She said she heard things walking just out of sight, shapes moving between the trunks. I shrugged it off, told her it was stress. New house, new environment, normal adjustment stuff. Then I started having the same dreams. And then it got worse. One night last week, I woke up at exactly 3:17 a.m., not from a noise, not from a nightmare. I just knew I had to wake up. The house was silent. Even Bear wasn't snoring. I got up and looked out the back window. There, standing inside the fence, on the other side of the welded gate, I couldn't see much. Just a tall silhouette, pale, almost white, barely human-shaped. It didn't move. Didn't run when I turned on the porch light. It just raised a long, thin arm and pointed at me. I blinked. It was gone. The next morning, I found bare footprints in the dew. Human-looking, but wrong. Toes too long, arches too low. They led from the gate, across the backyard, and stopped right beneath our bedroom window. That night, Sarah said I was talking in my sleep. Not mumbling, whispering. She said I kept repeating the same phrase over and over. Let me back in. I remember now. Let me back in. I don't remember any of it. But she swears she saw me get up around 2 a.m., unlock the back door, and stand by the fence, just staring. She said I whispered something to the gate, and something whispered back. Last night was the worst. I woke to Sarah shaking me, tears in her eyes. The gate, she said. Listen. I held my breath. In the silence, I heard it, metal groaning. A slow, dragging, shrieking noise. Rusted hinges straining. We ran to the window. The gate was open, bent inward, like something had forced its way through the welds. I grabbed a flashlight and went out barefoot, heart pounding. The air near the gate was colder, still, like the woods themselves were watching. And that's when I saw it. The word on the gate, stay, was gone, scratched over with deep, jagged gouges. Now it said, welcome home. I don't know what I did. I don't know what's calling to me from those woods, but something that remembers me. And I think I'm starting to remember it too. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell to see more stories like this. And remember, stories are just echoes. What you hear depends on how closely you listen.